and she does work for the betterment of her fellow sorcerers. Hey geeks, welcome to my channel. I'm Trey Guillotine, and today I'm talking about the casting news that is coming out of Netflix's upcoming adaptation of The Witcher. Remember, if you like this video, to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it around so others can join in the conversation. Let's geek out. We've recently gotten news of the initial beginning of casting for Netflix's upcoming adaptation, The Witcher. This adaptation is not necessarily going to be an adaptation of the video game series, but more specifically an adaptation of the short stories and novels written by Andrzej Sapkowski of the Witcher series, which is about the Witcher Geralt, who's part of a mutated monster hunting guild, and he travels the world, or travels the land, slaying monsters on like a contract basis. He's basically a hired monster killer, but of course, because it's fantasy, and it's kind of pulp fantasy in the fact that he's the most dashing witcher there is, and he just bangs every sorceress he comes into contact with. Every single woman who sees him, they want him. It's very pulp in that sense, but it's still a really good stories, and it's made an amazing game series from CD Projekt Red, who actually have the story taking place after the ending of the Witcher series novelizations, and it continues the story of Geralt and everyone in the Witcher series throughout the next 3 games. But again, the adaptation, as far as we know, is going to be specific to the novels and not the video games, so it's less of a video game TV series and more of a novelization adaptation, or a TV series novelization of a series of books written by Andrzej Sapkowski. So the big news that has already come up, now that I've basically told you all about The Witcher, if you didn't already know, the big news coming out of The Witcher casting is that Henry Cavill will be playing Geralt of Rivia, The Witcher, the main character, the title character, and I think this is some really good news. Henry Cavill, in my opinion, is an excellent actor, and he's kind of already he's like past the beginning point of his career starting to really take shape. He's got the DC movies as Superman, which I'll talk about in a second, but the other movies, he's got like The Men from U.N.C.L.E., and he was in the latest Mission Impossible movie, which I didn't see, but from what I have seen of him, he's a very good actor, and I don't hold the unsuccessful and brooding nature of Superman within the worlds of DC films. I don't hold that against Henry Cavill. I've never thought that the problem with the DC movies was the cast. It was the direction and the production and the script. It was literally the problems with DC is literally everything aside from the cast. The cast has been fine. I think Henry Cavill would have been a really great Superman if Zack Snyder and the rest of DC Entertainment weren't trying to make Superman into Batman. But he played the role that he was directed to play very well. I think he is a really good actor, but not only is he a really good actor, he is also a fan of the Witcher series. He was seen in an interview where he was talking about the video games he's played, and the last game he played was The Witcher, and just how great of a game it was, and you can't fault him. That game is an amazing game. The Witcher 3, in my opinion, is one of the best games I've ever played. So he is a fan of the Witcher series, at least the video game series, so already not only is he just a really strong actor in his right, he's also a fan of the series and of Geralt, the role that he's now going to be playing. Even the physicality of him, he can definitely pull off the look of Geralt. He has a very chiseled face. His face looks like it was chiseled out of stone from Mount Olympus. The dude is a handsome looking dude. He definitely has the face. He definitely has the body structure of it. Just put on a white beard and some long white hair and some scars. He can definitely pull off the role as the Witcher. Given this casting news, in true geeking out and speculation, I wanted to talk about some other possible casting choices for some of the characters in The Witcher, starting with the sorceresses. So already, I admit, this isn't something I thought of myself. This was something that someone posted on the internet, and they posted a kind of mocked up picture. I mean, ever since Henry Cavill was announced as The Witcher, fans have made like photoshopped mock-ups of what Henry Cavill could look like as Geralt the Witcher. Well, someone else made one of Yennefer the Sorceress, who is kind of the big, in my opinion, the big love of his life character. The Sorceress Yennefer is Geralt's one love of his life, even though they have a very off and on relationship, sometimes together, sometimes they hate each other, sometimes they're working with each other, sometimes they're working against each other. They have a very, I don't want to say toxic, but very volatile relationship that is actually based on a wish that Geralt made with a genie. It was very like he and Dandelion accidentally, well, not accidentally, Dandelion released the genie, but Geralt ended up being the one with the 3 wishes for the genie. And in this story, the genie's a very trickster. I mean, most genies are very tricky, and it's always, careful what you wish for. But one of the wishes Geralt made was that he and Yennefer would be together forever, or they'd be connected forever. So a lot of their romance, and it's something they explore in Witcher 3, they question whether this romance that they have, the love that they feel for each other, is real, or if it's based on the magic of the genie. And that's something that, because The Witcher is one of those games where you can choose the dialogue choices, you can choose make the decisions throughout the entire game, you actually get to choose whether that love is real or if you want to go love someone else. The Witcher 3 has plenty of romance options. Yennefer being one of them, and in my opinion, I think they're the couple, like they're the ones who are made for each other. I really feel that. That's my own opinion. There are plenty of others who have perfectly valid reasons for why they support this ship or that ship, and I'm not usually one that ships characters in books and stories, but Geralt and Yennefer is one of the ones that I do. But anyway, someone made a mock-up of what an actor could look like as Yennefer, and they actually did it with Eva Green, and I think this would be a really good idea. If you don't know who Eva Green is, she's a fairly popular actress, I feel. She was in the new James Bond, well, not the new James Bond, it's now been a few years, but she was in the reboot James Bond with Daniel Craig. She played Vespa, and the romance, like the big love of James Bond's life in Casino Royale. She played Vespa. She was also in The Golden Compass, which wasn't one of the best movies ever, but she was in that. So, and I think Eva Green could definitely pull off that role. She's a very petite woman, and in the books, that's how Yennefer is described. She's very petite, and I think Eva Green could definitely pull that off. She can also pull off that very mystical air of mystery that Yennefer also has with her, as she's a very secretive person. Even with Geralt, she hardly ever tells him her real motives until it's like dangling off the edge of a cliff and they finally come together and make up again, and then go on later and they break up again. But I think Eva Green would be an excellent choice for Yennefer of Vengerberg, Yennefer the Sorceress. The other sorceress that is also a love interest within the books and also in the video game series is Triss Merigold. She is, I feel, the exact opposite of what Yennefer is, where Yennefer is very dark and mystical and not political. I guess she is kind of political because she's very, like, Yennefer is very scheming, but not in like hee way. Like, she has her own motives, whereas Triss is also very political, but it's because she wants to be in charge. She wants to lead her guild of sorcerers, or I guess they're all sorcerers or witches. She wants to be that prominent figure, and she does work for the betterment of her fellow sorcerers, but she's also kind of, I don't want to say emotionally immature. She's the girl next door. I think that's the best way you can describe it. Not that what Geralt ever felt for Triss wasn't real, or that she's a stereotypical girl next door character, but I think that's one of the best ways you could describe it if you can picture that kind of character. She is very much the girl next door. She's very young. She's very giggly. She's very hopeful. I wouldn't say naive, but she does want the best, even if that's not always realistic. But anyway, I think a really good casting choice for her would be Bryce Dallas Howard, which you've probably seen her in a number of things. She's in, specifically, what I know her the most for is in Jurassic World. Bryce Dallas Howard is also the daughter of Ron Howard, who is the director of, most recently, the Solo Star Wars story. But Bryce Dallas Howard, I think, has the look, especially in her hair, but she definitely has the look and also the acting chops to pull off that role. So I think Bryce Dallas Howard would be a really good choice for Triss Merigold. Moving on from Geralt's love interests and sorcerers and sorceresses, let's talk about his best friends, who are, for the most part, seen throughout the stories and throughout the video games, and that's Dandelion and Zoltan. So Dandelion, he's not that deep of a character. He's a very womanizing, theatrical thespian. He's manipulative. Like, he kind of is a jerk and he's kind of a dick, but he's a very self-centered, womanizing kind of musician and thespian. Like, that's his big characteristic, is that he's always sleeping with all these different women. He's always tricking all these women into bed. Like, he's a very puckish character with the side of being a womanizing, manipulating thespian. But he's also Geralt's best friend, and he's in a lot of the stories, so I think a really good choice for this would be Neil Patrick Harris. Now, Neil Patrick Harris doesn't exactly, he's blonde, whereas Dandelion is often seen as brunette, but, like, you can't change the hair color of an actor. I really think Neil Patrick Harris would be an excellent choice to play this womanizing thespian. Not only has Neil Patrick Harris played a womanizing character in the role of Barney in How I Met Your Mother, he also has a lot of experience as a thespian, acting on Broadway, in plays, singing, dancing. He has that experience, so I think he would fit really well in the role of Dandelion. Now, Zoltan, if you want a good idea of who Zoltan is, he's a dwarf, and he's basically Gimli, but with more interest in the arts. He's pretty much Dandelion's, like, partner in crime. They always get up to hijinks together, and he's a great character, and I really like him. But the only person I can really think of, and I admit it's because I don't know a lot of the other actors who are, I don't know what the proper term is, little people or dwarves. This is going to be typecasting, but I'm going to say Peter Dinklage. I think he could do the role well. It's not that he's just a dwarf. It's also, I think he could do that role well, and it would be very different from his role as Tyrion Lannister, which is kind of the role that I feel has propped him up in the bigger celebrity status that he's in. But I think he could do the role of Zoltan Chevet really well. It would be a lot of fun for him. It wouldn't just be Tyrion who's drinking and womanizing. It would basically be him being a boisterous dwarf who is also a fan of the arts. So now moving on from Geralt's friends to Geralt's fellow Witchers, we have 3 Witchers that are with him at the School of the Wolf, which is the specific, like, guild of Witchers that he belongs to. There's multiple guilds of Witchers throughout the world, from School of the Griffin Bear, Cat, Viper, and Manticore, although I think Manticore might have been made up just for the video game series, but I might be wrong on that. But he does have a few other Witchers that he interacts with and lives with sometimes within the books and in the games. So we're going to start with Vesemir, who's kind of the guild leader of the School of the Wolf of Witchers, and it's something that an actor has already shown interest in playing. Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill has already showed interest in wanting to play Vesemir the Witcher in Netflix's Witcher series, and I think that would be a great idea, especially as he is now. Mark Hamill, he already does kind of look like Vesemir, so I think that would be a perfect role. The other 2 Witchers of Lambert and Eskel. Lambert is he's kind of a jerk. Not even kind of a jerk, he's a jerk. He's very sarcastic, he's very sarcastic, and he's just kind of a dick, like, most of the time. Although he's also someone who's very upfront about things. Like, he doesn't hold back. He tells it how he sees it. But Lambert, I think a good choice for that would be Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Not only does he have the look, I think he could have fun with that kind of role. And then the other Witcher character is Eskel, who, again, just like Triss and Yennefer, are complete opposites. Eskel and Lambert are complete opposites, whereas Lambert is very much a dick. Eskel is just a genuinely nice guy who wants to help people, and, he still has fun, he still laughs at a lot of Lambert's jokes, but he's the nice guy. He's the nice guy of the Witchers. And I think Mark Ruffalo could really do well in that role. He kind of has that look, like, he's not, I don't want to say classically handsome, but very, aside from the scars that Eskel has, which his face is really scarred up, he's not conventionally handsome. He's more like nice guy handsome. I don't really know how to describe that, but I think Mark Ruffalo could do that role well. this final bit of casting, and we already do have just the hint of news on this, not so much of who they want to cast in this role, but the kind of actor they want to get in this role. And that's the role of Ciri, who in the books, Ciri is a very important character, and she's kind of the daughter of Geralt and Yennefer, although she's not really their daughter. She's more their ward, who they're the ones who ended up raising her. She's a princess from another kingdom who ended up with them because she was a child of destiny. It's this whole big thing about her destiny, which her destiny is something that is explored very well in The Witcher 3, but in the books, she's still a child of like 12 at the oldest, I think. But the showrunner has already said who she would want to put in the role of Ciri. And the showrunner has already given some hints of the type of actor she would want to put in the role of Ciri. So Laura S. Hissrich, who is the showrunner of Netflix's The Witcher, has already given hints that she would specifically like to look for a person of color, a child actor, a young woman actor, child of color, actor of color in the role of Ciri. Which, of course, because this is 2018, so of course people are going to be outraged about this. A lot of fans have already argued that, this isn't the right way to do this, blah, blah, blah. They should stick to the source material and not include a person of color. Even some fans of the Polish community, a Polish writer is the person who wrote, Andrzej Sapkowski is a Polish writer. The books were originally published in Polish, I think, in Poland. So a lot of fans are arguing that this is blasphemy to the Witcher series and they should boycott the series on Netflix and whatever. But other fans have also harassed Lauren Hissrich over this choice of who she would like to put in the role of Ciri, to the point that they've basically booed her off of social media. She stepped down, saying that she wanted to listen less and write more. She's basically backing out of social media because of this hatred, because of this harassment. Personally, I was thinking about this even before I read this news article of what was going on with fans and Lauren Hissrich. I was thinking that it would be a really great idea if they actually casted more actors of color in this series. But on the other hand, just to talk about some other possible arguments for this, from what I know about Poland, it's not a heavily diverse ethnicity. Like, there's not, as far as I know, there's not a lot of black people in Poland. It's not because that, like, Poland is racist. It's just not something that's there. It's not a culture that's represented, as far as I've seen, in Poland. So, sure, being that it was a Polish book and a Polish writer who wrote it, you could argue that the Polish culture is a big part of The Witcher. However, The Witcher does not take place in Poland. The world of The Witcher is not the world of Poland. It's not Poland. It is a fantasy world full of dwarves and monsters and elves and potentially other ethnicities. So it's entirely feasible to say that there could be more people of color actors for characters who are white. Because if you look at the cast and character list of The Witcher, it's like looking at a white rabbit in a snowstorm. There's no other ethnicities represented in it. Again, is that necessarily racist on the part of the writer and the creators of the book and game? Not necessarily. It is what it is. Like, there's not a lot of other cultures represented in Poland, as far as I know. I could be wrong, and if I am, please correct me. But the fact that The Witcher doesn't actually take place in Poland, it takes place in a magical world where all of these incredibly supernatural things are possible, there's very little reason to think that there could be other ethnicities represented in The Witcher. Now, for the most part, when there are other ethnicities that do show up in The Witcher, they're from faraway land. They're from other lands that are not the lands that Geralt usually operates in, which, I mean, the same thing can be said for Lord of the Rings. Anytime, like, for the most part, the cast of the Lord of the Rings, or the characters in Lord of the Rings, are white, but then someone will come in from another land. They even showed that in Middle-earth Shadow of War. One of the characters was a black captain of Gondor, but he wasn't from Gondor. He was from another land that came to Gondor at a very young age. So no, I don't think that's really a big deal that they're trying to cast Ciri in the role of a person of color. I don't think it'd be a big deal to cast any of the characters in the role, any of the characters as actors of color. I think that would be a great idea, and you could argue that diversity for diversity's sake is a bad thing. I'm going to argue that it's not, because there aren't a lot of representations for other ethnicities, and I think there should be. But so yeah, casting Ciri as a person of color I think would be a great idea. Casting any of the characters as a person of color would be a great idea. Also, on the other side of this argument, well, not on the other side of this argument, but to talk about this just situation in general, this is the second time, not even in a year that I know of, the second time in the last 6 months that fans outrage over characters who are not men and not white have basically bullied someone off of social media. It happened with the actress who played Rose in The Last Jedi, and now it's happening with the showrunner of The Witcher, Lauren Hissrich. And I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. If we as a society can't reel that in and not be complete garbage about things like this, then maybe we don't deserve things like this. Maybe we don't deserve a Witcher series. Maybe we don't deserve an MCU or more Star Wars movies. Maybe we don't deserve this, because it seems anytime anything like this happens, when a creator or actor just has the gall, just has the how dare they cast someone who's not white and not a man. Like, I'm sorry, like, like, that's bullshit. The fact that that's how our society reacts when things like this happen, that we can't deal with something like that, then maybe we don't deserve these TV shows. But that's how I feel about that, just in a short blurb. Maybe we could talk about that on an entirely different video. But I think the idea of casting a person of color in the role of Ciri or any of the other roles in The Witcher would be a great idea. Specifically for Ciri, I honestly don't know I don't know the many child actors that are popular in Hollywood right now. The only really person of color I could really think of, and it's literally the only one I can really think of, is Zendaya, who was in Spider-Man Homecoming. I think she could do the role, but again, I don't know how young or old they want to make Ciri in this particular story. She's very young in the books, but they could potentially make her older. But originally, when I was thinking about who they could cast for Ciri, I wasn't thinking of young actors of color, and I wasn't even, at this point, thinking of young actors. I thought of Abigail Breslin and Dakota Fanning, but I'm pretty sure they're not children anymore. Like, they've grown up. It's been a few years since they were child actors, so I really don't know. I don't know. I don't have a suggestion of who they could cast as Ciri, whether it's an actor of color or not. I really don't know. But that is my potential cast list of who I think would do a really good job in the casting of The Witcher. But now I want to hear what you have to say. Are there any other actors or even other characters that I didn't talk about here that you think would be good casting choices for Netflix adaptation of The Witcher? Let me know in the comments and follow me on all the internets. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it around so others can join the conversation. If you want to see my reviews of video games or Marvel TV shows and movies or any of my other content, go to www.treyguillotine.com and subscribe to my channel to geek out some more. Thanks for watching and have fun. So Captain America, Thor, Hulk.